You are looking live at the famed road course in Watkins Glen, New York, where today the IndyCars challenge a rain-slick course at 150 miles an hour, just a week after the incredible drama at Indianapolis.
Michael and Marco Andretti running 1 and 2.
Here goes Marco Andretti.
Hey, Dad, watch this. Marco Andretti, the fans on their feet. Here comes Sam.
Almost goes into the pit lane.
Can a teenager win in Indianapolis?
Sam Hornish Jr. makes the pass. He'll win it. 63 thousandths of a second as Sam Hornish Jr. has beaten Marco Andretti. Sam Hornish Jr. has won the 90th Indianapolis 500.
Today, a week after the incredible drama of the 500, the IndyCars take to the winding roads of Watkins Glen.
Crowds screaming, superstars were bound to show the battle scars. I've been the first to sign on every wall. Down the road and round the bend, we pray to God it never ends. I've been, I've seen, we scream to everyone. We'll see you at the show. If you don't come, we'll never know. But
We welcome you to the Watkins Glen Indy Grand Prix, and our live coverage on this Sunday afternoon begins with the Firestone race day. It has been raining here hard much of the time over the last 2 days. Welcome, everybody. With Rusty Wallace, I'm Brent Musburger. A pleasure to be along with you. My guy here is a NASCAR star on this track. 10 top 10 finish. You won a couple of times. You could teach these guys a thing or two.
Oh, Brent, look, I've never raced an IndyCar, and I've never raced in the rain, so I can't help these guys much today.
Let's take you back. A week ago, there's still an enormous buzz about the Indy 500, Rusty.
Oh, there really is. It's one of the most exciting Indianapolis 500 ever. Right from that last lap pass, right to the line with Sam Hornish passing 19-year-old Marco Andretti, or all the way back to Roger Penske making that crucial call to bring Hornish back in and top him off the fuel to give him enough fuel to make it right to the very end. And you know what? Hornish was great behind the wheel, but Penske really helped him win that race.
You know, the month of May began in the rain in Indianapolis, and what a merry month it was.
After a nasty month of qualifying, it has come up gorgeous.
Sam Hornish Jr. grabs his first pole ever at Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
It's time for the 90th running of the Indianapolis 500.
Sam Hornish stalls the car.
Can a teenager win in Indianapolis? At the stripe, Hornish wins.
Hell of a man guy. Whoa, you're the man.
The second closest finish in Indy history.
Closer to the prize at the end of the rope. All night long, dream of the day.
Well, if that was the month that was, the week that was, that this young man just encountered as the newest Indy 500 champion, Sam Hornish Jr., how important is it to finally put all that aside and get back in the cockpit?
It's been a pretty busy week for us, but a long month overall for May, and I'm just really happy things turned out the way they did for us. Well worth it to have to go and do all the things that we've done over the past week, and just looking forward to getting out there in the race car today and see what happens.
A little bit different. We're talking about turning left, turning right. We've got the weather issue in the rain. What's the most important thing that you're going to have to do today to score a victory here on the road course?
Keep it on the track is the big thing. Got to make sure that nobody gets under our skin out there today. Just whatever happens, happens. If it starts to dry out, it's going to be really tricky to figure out when the right time is to go to slicks, because usually the first guy that does that goes off the track. So we got to wait and see what happens.
Jamie, it was a great Indianapolis 500 for Sam Hornish, and oh yeah, it did involve a family with the last name of Andretti.
That's right. Of course, you're talking to Sam Hornish, who was the victor, and he's all excited. But the disappointment for Marco Andretti, I mean, if I was a rookie and I finished second, I'd be pretty excited, Marco. But everything we've heard you say is you don't want to see that finish again. Looking back now, how do you feel about your performance?
Still the same, unfortunately. But I think it's just the fact that I lost by so little. I think maybe if I would have charged from 5th in the closing laps, I would be happy. But to be leading out of turn 4, it hurts.
Definitely hurt. We're watching them pass right there at the end, and he's got to get back in the car. Doesn't want to watch that finish again. And Dad, Michael Andretti, what a performance from you. You got back in the car, but most of the day, you got the perfect vantage point of your son for the first time ever. What was that like for you?
It was fun. It really was. I was with him all day long, following him, and did a great job. Drove like a true champion, and I was just so disappointed there in the end. I was his cheering section when I was following. In fact, I was so into the driving that I forgot about that I was racing, and I actually cut Tony off, and that cost him a position in the last lap of the race because I wasn't even looking at my mirrors. So at that point, I was definitely a dad.
You had a lot going on that day, but there is one team, Dr. Punch, that was more disappointed than the Andrettis, and that's Team Chip Ganassi.
Exactly, Jamie. The frustrations of last week in the Indy 500 left a bitter taste in the mouth of these guys, the Target Ganassi drivers, Scott Dixon and Dan Weldon. But when you guys came here a year ago, you had reason to celebrate here last September because on that day, this guy, Scott Dixon, was crowned a winner and Dan Weldon was crowned a champion. I got to ask you, Dan, last week at Indy, the green flag waves, you lit the fires and led by lap 10. What's the strategy here today?
I think we just need to do exactly the same. We're starting a little further back, and we haven't had as much time in the Target car as we would like, but it's the same for everybody. I think we stand a good chance. Obviously, Scott's in the Energizer car and featured strongly last year, so we'll hope we do the same.
Let me ask Scott a question. Scott, last year, despite the horsepower deficit, you were unbeatable at this racetrack. What is it about this place that fits your driving style so well?
I don't know. I just think we had some great testing here. The team supplied me with a great car, and I think Target and Energizer this weekend have done the same for both of us. It's going to be a tough race conditions today. We're going to be driving our hardest to try and get another win out of here. I'm starting the same spot, so hopefully it goes that way.
Hey guys, best of luck to you today. Good luck out here in the race. We'll head back upstairs to Brent Musburger, guys.
All right, Jerry. Another big story. Danica Patrick. For the second time, she finished in the top 10 at Indianapolis. Rusty and I will come back and talk about Danica Patrick when we continue here on ABC.
I am Indy. I love the way I feel. To be me is something real, 'cause I am Indy.
Well, it is worthwhile now to take a look at the IRL standings following the Indianapolis 500, and we can see, Rusty Wallace, that Elio Castroneves, who was disappointed a week ago, still leads the league with 156 points.
He's still got the lead right now, Brent, and what he needs to do right now is forget about Indianapolis, what happened there, and focus on the points. He's got to keep this thing on the course and not make any mistakes, because right now it's all about getting points towards the championship.
And it's very, very tight. Another driver who needs to climb up, coming off her second consecutive top 10 finish at Indy, Danica Patrick, and Jerry Punch with more on Danica.
Well, Brent, Danica is strapped in the car here, and a lot of experts believe it took more skill and experience for Danica to finish 8th on that slippery and hot track and that finicky Panos last week in Indianapolis than it did finishing 4th a year ago. She impressed a lot of people, but beginning this year on a road course at St. Pete, she also impressed some folks. She started at the back of the pack where she starts today, but when the race was over, she had made her way all the way to a series best 6th place finish on a non-oval track event. Danica hoping to duplicate that performance again here today. Jack?
Well, Doc, of course, Elio Castroneves, very disappointed last week at the Indianapolis 500, the first DNF in his career there. But Elio is a man that believes that the glass is half full, not half empty. He's excited to be back here on a road course. Why? Because he won at St. Pete, his first road course victory of his IRL IndyCar career. He told me just before he strapped himself in the car, Jack, you got to remember one thing, rain or no rain, you can climb the fence here without a raincoat. Jamie?
Well, Jack, there's a new face in the field today, Ryan Briscoe. It's the first time we've seen him back in an Indy car since his horrific crash last September at Chicagoland Speedway. He did walk away from that, and today he's getting another chance. He's filling in for Buddy Lazier in the 5 car. Because, guys, he is a road course specialist. And get this, he has the car qualified in 10th because he was 10th quickest in practice on Friday. That's the best position for this car so far this year. Brent?
All right, Jamie, thank you very much. Just some of the stories that we'll tell you about today. And now it is time to go down below and get ready to go racing.
And now, race fans, it's time for the most famous words in motorsports. Here to give that command, please welcome Tissot executive Phil Grieco.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's cold outside, but the drivers are about to heat things up. So without further ado, drivers, start your engines.
The Watkins Glen Grand Prix is next. You've been watching Firestone Race Day on ABC. They'll drop the green flag when we come back. The Watkins Glen Indy Grand Prix on ABC Sports, brought to you by Firestone Tires, a tradition of innovation. Capital One, what's in your wallet? And Honda, proud sponsor of the Indy Racing League IndyCar Series. Here at Watkins Glen, weather will be a big factor today. Let's go to the gentleman who will describe the action for you. Here's Marty Reed, Scott Goodyear, and Rusty Wallace. Marty?
Well, thanks, Brent, and hello again, everybody. Weather's not the only thing that the drivers are going to have to battle. If you remember, coming off of Indianapolis, you've got the whole month of May. It's emotionally and physically draining. But we could tell by the time race day came around, even though the weather was going south on us, they were getting their game faces on. But, Rusty Wallace, we have had one casualty to the weather, qualifying.
Yeah, we've lost qualifying, Marty. We're going to be starting by practice speeds today. These guys have had a lot of practice, though, in the dry conditions, and they've had a lot of practice in the wet conditions. So I don't think it's going to be a big deal. These guys are definitely prepared for this.
All right, Rusty has mentioned that he's never raced in the rain. You have. It creates a whole different set of problems for everybody out there.
And there's a lot of drivers around here today that are looking forward to this because there's a lot of road course experts around the circuit right now. A lot of them are starting at the front. Maybe some of them are somewhere in the middle, and they'll work their way up. But the track is also changing. It looks to be a little bit wet right now. It's going to dry out. Teams are going to have to decide when they're going to put some slicks on. And when we talk about that, let's go around the track just real quickly here on board with Danica Patrick as she goes along the front straightaway here up to about 170 miles an hour and into turn one. A third gear turn, back up the gears as she's going to rise towards the S's. This is a 20-foot drop from turn one to turn two. She's going through turn 2, 3, and 4, 150 miles an hour as you're still climbing speed entering on to the back stretch here, all the way down towards what we call the bus stop, which is where she's coming now. Hard braking, a great passing zone along in here going into the bus stop. The second passing zone, as we call it. The first one was back in turn 1. Back through here, 120 miles an hour through the bus stop. And now going through the turn section here, which is part of the former track, and now going on to what we call the boot, which was added in 1971. The NASCARs used a shorter track, and the Indy cars here, Formula One cars, all above, use this long track here. Turn 7 we're going through, down to about 85 miles an hour, back up through the gears, over a blind brow, into turn 8, and back hard on the gears. Another opportunity for braking and passing people here. Making a right-hand turn, third gear, climbing back up through the gears. And this is a very difficult section. You can see it's wet even at this time. But as you start to climb into this turn, it really loads the car, unloads the car in this section here. The back end becomes very greasy. And now you start towards turn 10, a very fast left-hander. Set yourself up for turn 11. The last turn back onto the front stretch. And you get around this 3.3-mile track in about 1 minute and 30 seconds, guys. A great race course.
And that's one lap on the 3.37-mile circuit here at Watkins Glen International. Let's quickly see if we can talk to last week's winner.
Sam Hornish, this is Rusty Wallace, ABC. You got us, buddy. Sam Hornish, Rusty Wallace, and ABC. Do you hear us?
Going green this time. Going green this time.
Well, it sounds like Sam is having a little problem hearing us. So we will get ready for the start of the race, as you heard on the radio. The transmission going green this time. Our onboard cameras starting back in 16th position will be the number 16 car of Danica Patrick. Then as we move a little bit forward into the 12th position, it'll be Koski Matsura, as he'll be outside of row number 6. Then moving further up in the field in row number 3, in the number 5 starting position, it'll be Dan Weldon, as his teammate Scott Dixon is sporting a new paint scheme. Yes, notice the Energizer blue. Well, he's hoping to have the energy of the Energizer Bunny. And then quickly, Marco Andretti starting 3rd, and Tony Kanaan starting in the 2nd spot. So they are getting ready as they're heading up towards turn number 9, and there is our onboard with Tony. Pole sitter has the choice of starting inside or outside on the road course. Elio Castroneves, the fastest in practice, so he decided to start driver's right. That gives you the advantage, Scott Goodyear, going down into turn number 1.
You want to protect the inside line, and he feels that is the best thing to do. Watch for Tony Kanaan to try and make the run around the outside in turn 1, which sometimes is a great line, guys, to carry the speed up through to the S's.
I believe he's going to have a good line, Kanaan will have, because he's going to be on the asphalt, not on the concrete.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Watkins Glen Indy Grand Prix is green. Everybody makes it safely through turn 1. Now up through the S's. They try and get into single file, and they succeed. Out of turn 3, now down the long backstretch into our first real good passing zone.
See Tony Kanaan, he's hugging the inside there, protecting that line because they're not fully up to speed right now. People are running 2 abreast, trying to jockey for position going through the bus stop.
You saw Vitor Mira grab a spot there. You're on board with Dan Weldon for a moment.
Scott, the thing I'm noticing right now, this track is drying out real fast. We're only one lap into this thing, and it's already a lot of dry spots around the track. So they've got to really watch these puddles. They've got to keep this thing on course. That's what's going to gain these points for these guys today.
And watch for some different lines here. Some guys will take the traditional line. Some guys will actually start to run on the outside of the turn. They feel there is more grip there, as you're seeing Elio Castroneves running behind Tony Kanaan, trying to run a wider line. Sometimes they feel there's a bit more grip out there where the cars are usually not running and putting down a lot of rubber when the track is greasy. Here we go.
Going down into turn number 8, there's Vitor Mira, again trying to look underneath Marco Andretti. Can't get the job done. And right now, you can see there's just a few spots on the track that are very wet. That valley down there between turns 8 and 9. This stretch coming through into turn number 10. And this track is drying out quickly, guys, and now the strategy becomes, when do you make the call to go back to race slicks?
Well, right now, the sun is trying to pop through. We're getting this lightest sky we've had a long time, Marty. I think pretty soon we're going to be coming in for the slick tires, believe it or not. The track will dry quick, and we've got a pass in the front straightaway right now, and this is where they got to be careful.
Under heavy braking down into 1, Marco Andretti gets by Sam Hornish and Scott Dixon.
Took advantage of those 2 guys fighting coming to the last turn on turn 11. And he's a rookie only in stature, because I'll tell you what, this kid, 19 years old, so you call him a kid, but he really has proven himself at Indianapolis. I think that he's got a sight set on Formula 1, Rusty, and he's one of the best Americans that we've seen in a long time, with an opportunity to maybe get into F1.
Well, 19 years old, thinking about Formula 1 already. I'd be thinking about trying to finish this year out and see how it turns out. But boy, he had a heck of a race in Indy. I know we're still talking about him. A really, really neat run for him over there.
Let's get more on Marco from Jerry Punch.
Guys, until this weekend, Marco Andretti had never been in an IndyCar in the rain or wet conditions until they began to practice here on Friday. That was the first time he was in an IndyCar in wet rain conditions with a wet racetrack. And guess what? He was second quickest in this race a year ago as an Indy Pro Series driver. He had 2 practice sessions in the rain, and he learned a lot about trying to manipulate the race car. But he said, Dad and Granddad, Michael and Mario, didn't tell me anything about driving in the rain. He said, you got to learn it for yourself, and apparently he's a pretty quick learner.
You can see the vapor literally being squeezed out of the wings at the back of these cars as we head up towards turn number 9. Take a look at the Firestone telemetry.
See, he's all the way off the throttle. Look at Castroneves there sliding through the turn. It's so slippery. You have so compressed coming up through that turn. Get onto the top of the brow where you join on to the original track, and it becomes very slippery because the car really just releases off the road. Here's a very difficult section. These guys are going so quickly now. Watch the telemetry down to 7,000 RPMs. He'll shift when he gets to about 10,300 is the limit. Watch the braking going into the turn. Hard on the brakes, running a little bit lower line, a different line. Now he's going to try and get a little bit of a draft on Castroneves going up through the S's.
You still want a little bit of air coming over those wings. Don't follow too close.
And the track continues to dry out. Let's get more from Jack.
Well, fellas, these Firestone Firehawk rain tires have a very similar tread pattern to what you would find on one of your passenger cars. But there's a huge difference, and that is the compound. These are the stickiest, softest tires that Firestone makes for their racing environment. There's a little bit of concern right now as the track begins to dry by the elite teams here that they can only run so many laps before these tires start to come apart. I just checked with Tim Cindric and asked him when was he, Jerry Punch, going to pit Elio Castroneves. He said it's beginning to look like soon.
And Jack, last week in Indianapolis, likable Brazilian Tony Kanaan was very uncharacteristically patient. In fact, he didn't lead a lap until there were less than 20 to go, and he ended up just a gulp of fuel shy of having enough to win it. Well, yesterday in a team meeting, he told the team, guys, guess what? Tony the Tiger is back. When the green flag waves, I'm going to attack the front of the field and not attack until the checker flag waves. I guess Tony is already on the attack. He led before they got up the backstretch on lap 1. Guys?
And Doc, this is the third race in a row where Tony Kanaan has led this season. And right now, he is out in front of Elio Castroneves, the rookie Marco Andretti, the Indy 500 winner Sam Hornish, and the man who won here last year, Scott Dixon. We're going to take you side by side. You won't miss a thing as, whoa, Marco got a little loose at that far end of the track. Don't go anywhere. Don't forget, Thursday night, it's Game 1 of the NBA Finals with the Miami Heat taking on the Dallas Mavericks. Coverage begins in prime time at 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific, right here on ABC. And you noticed, if you were with us for side-by-side, Sam Hornish is backed up 2 spots. Scott Dixon and Vitor Meira both got around him. You're on board with Dixon right now.
We talked about some of the cars going into the pits possibly to put on slicks. The report so far is that the number 2 car of Tomas Scheckter has already done that. Now, these people that are still on wets, what they're looking for is to drive through any water that's out there to help cool those tires down. You can see the 27 right there, Franchitti, starting to slide underneath the 6 of Sam Hornish. He's starting to move his way up, but all these guys will be looking for some water to drive through to cool down those rain tires because of that soft compound that Jack Arute spoke about.
Scott, we've got no rain out here right now. The track's drying pretty quick, and I'll tell you what, sometimes the best track dryer is the race cars. With all these cars in the track right now, they're drying this track awful fast. So I expect pit stops any minute because already the rubber's flying off these tires.
Battle for second, no contest. Marco Andretti takes it over from Elio Castroneves. So move the 19-year-old rookie up to second. He is trying to chase down his teammate Tony Kanaan, who has opened up about a 3.5-second lead.
You would expect that with Tony Kanaan, with all his road racing experience and driving in the wet. Both he, Castroneves, Dixon, Meira, people like that have just a wealth of experience on road courses, but in big car experience, amazing to see Marco Andretti coming through and starting to show all these people that have the experience how it's done.
Scott, it just really doesn't surprise me. Andretti Green Racing at St. Pete, these guys were really fast. You remember Dario Franchitti? He was checked out and gone, and he lost that suspension component. And Marco, he did great there too. I think he broke a half shaft at that location also, but he's learned a lot from that time right now. I don't expect that to happen from him this time.
And the confidence factor, you can see it in him, as it has helped him a lot. And there is Tomas Scheckter. Now let's get an idea of what he's doing out on the racetrack. See how fast he is able to go. Remember, there's still some wet spots out there, and if you hit him at the wrong angle, you're going flying.
And that's the mental portion of this race, to be mentally strong, to be able to remember exactly where the track is wet, where you have to drive, to keep on the drive when you were on your slick. See the twitching going on right now? The tires are going to take a lap or two in this cold ambient temperature right now to start to come up to temperature. The warmer they are, the better they will get for him to have grip around the circuit.
Remember, Sam Hornish in our pre-race said usually the first guy to go on slicks is the first to crash. Let's get more from Jamie.
Well, I hope that's not the case for Tomas Scheckter. He was the first to come in. Now you can take a look here. The tread on these tires, this is what we call range. You guys are talking about a lot like the cars at home. But see, they heat up so much, you see it starts to melt and it creates a lot of marbles. So they took these off and put the slicks on. This is what we're used to seeing on these Indy cars. So when these guys pull out, guys, of pit road, if you can see, there's a lot of water still on the concrete side of pit road. So when they pull out, as we saw Tomas Scheckter spin and spin and spin, because there is no grip on these tires, guys.
Well, guys, they're down here, Tony Kanaan, Marco Andretti, Scott Dixon and company. You're wondering when they're going to go to slick tires? Well, they're all watching what you were seeing a moment ago. Tomas Scheckter, they have the stopwatches on, and they know that Scheckter right now is the only guy with the slick tires on. They're going to watch his lap times. If his lap times start to come down and he looks fairly comfortable on the racetrack, that is their signal to come in and put the slicks on. So right now, Marco Andretti, Tony Kanaan and company watching what's happening with Scheckter prior to making that move, and they're getting closer because Kanaan says that these rain tires are going away because the track is drying quickly. Jack?
Jerry, remember at the start of the show we talked about having someone like Roger Penske commanding a team, what it gives you for an added advantage. For that man, Elio Castroneves, and for Sam Hornish Jr., right now the captain is not only watching as everybody else is how Tomas Scheckter is getting around the racetrack, but the captain has already commanded Sam Hornish Jr. to turn back on the fuel, trying to conserve just a little bit of fuel early on in the race so that he'll have enough and maybe be able to do this race in 2 stops. You can do it if you get a couple of cautions, but right now I think that the Roger Penske fellas is already doing a little bit of gambling.
Well, and we can tell you while you're watching Elio Castroneves, Tomas Scheckter has just turned fastest lap of the race, 1 minute 47.3 seconds. To give you an idea, Marco's last lap was the fastest with the rain tires at 1 minute 51. So it looks like we're going to be seeing some guys going for the pits here pretty soon. In fact, Sam Hornish is heading down pit lane. So Roger Penske has seen enough, Jackaroo.
You know that he would make the move as soon as possible. Roger Penske counting his driver down to his pit stall. Very wide pit stalls here. Now watch as the crew will take these tires off, and the Firestone Firehawk rain tires are being exchanged for the slick tires. Now these slick tires have about the width in terms of tire tread of a credit card. That's the thickness. But right now, they're the hot setup. Tomas Scheckter proved that. Look for Elio Castroneves, fellas, and the rest of the field to do likewise very shortly.
All right, thanks, Jack. You're now looking again at Tony Kanaan. Remember, he finished second here last year to Scott Dixon. He is still out on the rain tires. His last lap time, 1 minute 51. He's still staying pretty consistent.
And what happens with these rain tires when they start to get hot? The car starts to squirm underneath you when you try to drive the car hard into the turn. You don't have as much side grip, so you end up going slower through the turn. You can't put the power down. I noticed before that Castroneves had oversteer. The back end was coming around, and it looks like right now Tony Kanaan, the 11 car that you're looking at right there, is getting very slow on the throttle. Now, when you look at the rear tires of these cars, you can see they're already starting to peel just a little bit because these tires are not being used in the element that they're made for. Some back end sliding around right there with Marco. Up the hill.
Marco, I need you to pit on this lap. Pit on this lap. Do you copy?
Kyle Moyer giving him some instructions. Time to come in for putting some fresh Firestone slicks on, Marty.
And I think this is a great move, guys, because Marco was really pushing hard on those rain tires, which, of course, eats them up even faster. So now he's going to get the break of coming in. He'll get clean track to get those tires heated up.
He drove real hard, and you can see as it goes up through the S's, the rubber is really coming off. And here comes Kanaan down pit road right now. He's had enough also right now. Looks like Andretti Green Racer bringing both cars in.
You've got a whole lineup coming in. Castroneves, Dixon, Franchitti.
Let's go to Doug.
Well, they've all made the call. Tony Kanaan, the leader, comes down. They put the Firestone Firehawk slicks on. In front of him is Dixon in the Energizer car. The race pit stop for Kanaan. Here comes Dan Weldon in, who couldn't hear him a moment ago.
Hey, reset your fuel.
Focus on David has just completed his exchange as well and tries to drag race Marco Andretti out pit road, but he fails in that endeavor. A very quick stop for Elio Castroneves. The slicks and fellas, I'm looking over them, and yes, they have chunked away, but still plenty of tread on them. Good time to make the change, guys.
Well, it absolutely was, especially when you get this statistic, guys. Tomas Scheckter in those last 2 laps was picking up 14 seconds on the leader in 2 laps.
Now, the most difficult thing is when you come out right now, like I said, get those tires up to temperature. Leaving pit lane is always still very difficult because it's a downhill grade, and going through this section here is also very tough. Now, somebody missed the bus stop, and that's the number 2 of Scheckter, so his tires are up to heat, Rusty, so that means he will be penalized in some form or fashion, possibly by the IRL officials if they deem that he improved his position on the racetrack. They'll go back and look at that via replay.
It looks like he hasn't improved his position yet, but that's another thing about trying to push the car real hard on the slicks. The slicks just do not have the traction if you hit those wet spots on the track.
got word just a few moments ago, Buddy Rice managed to turn it around. He did this in practice. In fact, he did it in turn 1. Here he does it coming out of, ooh, man, and he almost clipped that barrier. And that's Danica, it looks like. Yes, it is.
That was Danica. Remember, her teammate Buddy Rice last year crashed leaving the pit lane and put the car into the wall.
So let's go back with the onboard camera, see what happens.
See, just on the gas a little bit too much. And this is important to note, guys. These cars this year do not have traction control. Last year, these cars had traction control, and you wouldn't get that. It's almost like traction control in your road cars. They are using their foot today.
So right now, Jeff Simmons, the rookie, is your leader. And we'll find out if he can hold on to it. Stay with us. We'll be back after this word from our ABC stations at Watkins Glen. Back here at Watkins Glen, we are under a caution as Jeff Simmons, who has had assumed the lead. You can see his car there with the damaged wing. And the tough part for Jeff is he's had a lot of damage in Motegi. At Indianapolis, he crashed, and he has crashed here. And we talked to Jim Prescott as we take a look at it right here as he was spinning and just clipped it. Prescott basically told him, just bring the car home with all 4 wheels. Well, he hasn't done it yet. Jack?
Well, Marty, Jeff Simmons from East Granby, Connecticut had just pitted and taken on those slick tires. And as Scott Goodyear had been warning all of our viewers, and Jim Prescott was warning his driver, those tires have to get up to temp. They had not gotten up to temperature, and Jeff Simmons got on a little too hard, and you saw the end results.
And he has already gone down 1 full lap and probably will lose another by the time they get him towed around and back into the pits. Right now, Tomas Scheckter is your race leader. If you're wondering, there was no penalty when he came through the chicane because he did not improve his position. So there are the top 5. We'll go side by side. You won't miss a thing. We're still under the caution flag here at Watkins Glen International, the 3.37-mile road course. As you can tell, the track has dried out. Everybody has now gone to race slicks, and just as we do that, off to the north, the clouds are building again, so we'll keep our fingers crossed. Now let's go back because we overheard a conversation with the second place Tony Kanaan and Kim Green.
Scheckter changed a couple laps before us. And Scheckter shortcut the course. Didn't gain any positions on the track, but did gain track position.
So they were communicating to Tony. That's why Scheckter is still out in front. He came across the chicane, but did not improve his position on any other car at that time because he was really the first to come in. Had this not gone to a yellow situation, guys, he would have been the inheritor of a very big lead when everybody cycled through.
And Marty, by cutting the course, he really didn't go any faster because unlike a NASCAR race, they put up tires in there, almost like a chicane, good Scott, where he's really got to slow down to get through those tires. He slid just enough that he saved himself and he was able to guide through them. So it's not like he went right through it, picked up a lot of time. He really didn't help himself at all by doing that.
Pace cars pulled off. They'll make their way around the final few corners. For Scheckter, the second race he's led this season. If you remember, he led 3 laps back at Motegi. But his one bugaboo has been the fact of getting the car to the stripe. He has 2 DNFs in 4 races this year, both by crash. Coming through to turn number 11. He's on the throttle already. The starter stand has actually been moved about 400 yards further down, and you hear the command, and we're back to green flag racing at Watkins Glen.
Smart of Marco not to chance it against his teammate, the 7-Eleven car ahead of him of Tony Kanaan.
And you saw him hacksaw on the wheel.
Oliver getting loose up off of turn 1 right now. It's still wet, plus the tires are cold, Marty. We started this race at 56 degrees with a track temperature of 56 degrees also, so it's pretty cool out here right now.
Marco struggled through the S's there, trying to keep his speed up. Starting to run low right now.
And as they go down into the bus stop chicane, Doc, is it raining again?
Well, some of the spotters on the back part of the course have radioed the pits and said, guys, we're getting some sprinkles over here. Now, I'm wondering, Rusty and Scott, if you're a driver and you just put slicks on, what are you thinking when you're hearing possible raindrops up the backstretch?
Well, it's strange, but a lot of people actually running road courses look at the spectators around the racetrack. If they start to put up their umbrellas, or brawlies as we call them back home, guys, then you know it's actually starting to rain in that section of the racetrack. It can be dry in turns 1 and 2, for instance, and wet in this section where we are here at the toe of the boot over here in turns 7, 8, and 9 in this section here.
Dixon is all over Elio Castroneves, cannot get the pass completed. He's going to try and dive on him heading into turn 8. He does it this time.
Elio's been having trouble putting the power down. We saw his car was loose on power down, and there's Sam Hornish. Yes, Sam.
So Sam has turned it around, and we have got another full course caution here on lap 13 of 60. As it looks like, does he still have it under power if he can keep the engine going? No, I don't think so. I think they're going to come out bump starting. So Sam at the time was running in 9th position. And he is not known for his prowess on the road courses compared to how good he is on the ovals, but he has been working on it. Let's see what happens here.
Right in the very bottom section, transitioning over where it's getting the power down just a little bit too much. Weldon does a great job driving through the smoke to miss him, but we mentioned before that these cars no longer have traction control. Before, that would not be a problem. Putting the power down, the computer would take over. Now it's up to the driver to gingerly put his foot on the right pedal.
So as Sam waits to get a bump start so he can get back into this, we'll go side by side. Stay with us. Scheckter out in front here at Watkins Glen.
Sam Hornish, the Indy 500 winner, pulling out after topping off in the pit. So Tomas Scheckter, the first to change tires, is our leader here. But there have been some other stories. Kanaan was very aggressive off the top. He will be a major factor. Danica Patrick, who has not been up to speed all weekend with a little bit of a wiggle. Marco Andretti, who has always raced well on this track, has shown early speed. And now, let's go down on the Hornish story.
Thank you, Brent. As you saw the spin by Sam as he was climbing up out of the boot, we are still under our second caution. He is now down 1 lap in 18th spot. The only guy behind him is Jeff Simmons, who brought out our first caution, guys.
Well, right now, these guys are just dying to get this racetrack dried out because there's 4 big places to pass around here, Marty. Going into turn 1, the bus stop or interloop, whatever you want to call it, into turn 7 and into turn 8. And they can't aggressively, Scott, make these passes right now because the track's just too wet. And as you see with Sam Hornish just a little while ago, that was just a classic case of coming off the corner and getting the rear tires in the wet and lighting it up in smoke and spinning it out. Nothing went wrong, just no grip.
And Rusty, the important thing to note here is that when the track starts to dry out, it dries out in the preferred line for all the drivers going around the course. To pass the car in front, you need to get off the dry line, which has been the preferred line, which has been drying out, and get onto the dampness, and it makes it so difficult to do. So you really have to be cautious not to get too hard into the turn under braking because you'll lose the car.
All right, let's get an update from the pits. Jackaroo.
Marty, real quickly, guys to watch will be the Fernandez Racing Team of Kosuke Matsura and Scott Sharp in the 55 and 8 respectively, along with Hornish. They pitted, topped off fuel. You know what that means. Now they'll be out of sequence. On a road course, you race the track, you race others. As we get ready to go back to green, they'll be in a race on their own.
Thank you, Jack. As we come through turns 9, 10, and 11 will bring us back onto the straightaway. The pace car is off, and we're going to be going back to green flag racing here.
Green flag, starter, green flag.
At Watkins Glen. Pretty much everybody in lockstep. Positions 1 through 10. Your top 5, Tomas Scheckter, Tony Kanaan, Marco Andretti, Dario Franchitti, and Scott Dixon.
Marty, this race is going to start changing here pretty shortly because I believe the guys that are really, really good on a road course, once this track dries out, they're really going to start hauling now. Now, Marco Andretti, big jump off the corner right there. Dario on the outside up, Dixon on the inside. Ooh, into the bus stop. This is where you get in trouble, guys. And there he goes around.
What a save by Marco. You hit those rumble strips in this car. It's not like your Nextel Cup car, Rusty. I mean, that's the kind that can destabilize you. It may cost him another position or two, but he saved it.
Remember, guys, in the last pit stop, he came out, he wasn't up to speed, as we now have another yellow caution period. 15 of Buddy Rice is off there, but Marco has some difficulty before coming off that previous pit stop where we saw his car wasn't working well for him.
You got a cone underneath your front nose. Keep it going if you can.
Oh, and Dario Franchitti. I wonder if these two came together at the same spot or if this is 2 separate incidents.
This was a separate incident, Marty. That was Franchitti going into the bus stop, got in there real hot, just couldn't make that turn. I was concerned about these two because when you saw him going into the turn, Marco Andretti making the pass in the middle of the back straightaway with Dario, his teammate, on the outside of him, boy, they both got in trouble right there. You could almost see it coming.
All right, let's go back and you can see what happens here. There goes Buddy at the entrance to the bus stop, and he hits the tires. Don't know if there's damage to the right side. Now, what happened to Dario in this?
And now his car is high-sided underneath, right underneath the Argent. The car is actually stuck on the edge of the pavement and the grass, and it's what we call high-sided, and you just can't get the thing moving.
These cars have only got like about a half an inch of clearance underneath the tubs, and he's just got the center of the tub hanging, and that's what got him stuck. Just couldn't get any bite.
Okay, so we know Buddy was at the entrance to the bus stop chicane, and
Dario should be over here in the gravel trap for some reason.
As we
just
come
to
out,
our left over there. If we're over, you start to move it, you'll probably see. There he is.
There
right
he
there.
is.
Yep.
Okay. So 2 separate incidents in the very same corner. We told you this was going to get a little dicey because of when, as soon as we go to the slicks.
As you're going in the bus stop, Dario's on the outside, gets in the water, just spins it right out. Classic case of getting in too hot, losing it right in the water. Guys, we talked about it all day long, but his charging are too hard right now with his track's not dry enough yet, Scott.
On board with Scott Dixon.
As you see the moisture come off the tires, because we talked about just earlier on, the track is not necessarily dry. Driving in hard, the tires are not up to temperature. And Dixon lucky just to get through that without having any harm to his car.
Well, he knew he was in trouble when he got at the bus stop and locked up that right front tire. And it's, oh my gosh, no grip. He could tell he was in hot then.
Damage on the right front for the number 15 of Buddy Rice. Now he is going to stay out because he does not want to go a lap down. Franchitti is already a lap down, and so is Simmons and Hornish. As you can see the mess that Dario Franchitti is in. I mean, he is up to the axle.
And that kitty marble, as we call it, just all that stuff that ends up slowing the car down so it doesn't hit the tire barrier or the Armco, does a great job, but it just gets everywhere. Obviously, the tires are no longer any good. Remember, Dario finished 3rd here last year, a great road racer. Trying to make up some time on a restart. You always try and do that. Just got in there just a bit too hot.
You know, Scott, we were talking to Danica Patrick earlier. I was pretty surprised to hear talking about no traction control. She says, I'm using my own traction control. So what are you doing? She says, I'm dialing the fuel position all the way to position 8, which knocks about 80 horsepower out of the engine. And when she wants to go back to racing, she puts it back in position 1. So a track that has no grip, she's taking the horsepower out of the motor so she can get some forward grip that way.
All right, you notice the graphic there on Marco Andretti, as Marco, we can tell you, has fallen back now to 5th place. Remember, he did make that good save. What happened there? That sounded awful.
He's warming the tires up, down a gear, and just hit the throttle and spin those rear tires and put some heat in it. And now he's working the steering wheel back and forth very quickly, trying to build some heat up into the front tires. And see, this is what you do through the turns, because there's high G load going through the turns, or a higher G load obviously than going through the straightaway, but at such a slow speed, you want to weave those tires and keep any heat that you have built up in the tires, keep the heat there if you possibly can. Remember, it's only in the 50s today, guys, and these tires are designed to run in temperatures that are 70, 75, 80.
You know, you mentioned the temperature. We should give a tip of the hat to all the fans that did come out. I mean, it has been dreary, cold, windy all weekend long, and the fans that came out, there are just some of them. Obviously, the walk-up crowd was affected by the rain today, but they're the hardy faithful, and we salute them. And also our camera crew who has been out in this. They did the Grand Am race till 9 o'clock. Here comes Elio Castroneves as he is 7th coming off of the track. He's going to drop back here, but obviously they want to take advantage of this situation. Let's go to Jack.
Rick Reineman changing the left front tire has a blinking lights and fluorescent so that Elio Castroneves can see him. It is fuel only, fellas. They're not going to change tires. This is a fuel war right now. This mixture of ethanol and methanol, and a lot of these teams are trying to extend their fuel window on the green as much as they can. Scott Sharp also back to try and top off the tank. And guys, this is what it's going to be, especially with these ever-changing conditions. You're going to try and keep that 30-gallon fuel tank filled to the brim, especially under caution's full course.
Well, it is going to give him an advantage of 9 laps over most of the field, 10 over Ryan Briscoe, and 13 over our leader, Tomas Scheckter. That's how long it's been since any of those cars have pitted, and they're still trying to get Dario Franchitti out on the racetrack. So there is your top 5 here at the Watkins Glen Indy Grand Prix. We'll be back after this word from our ABC stations.
The Watkins Glen Indy Grand Prix on ABC Sports, brought to you by Rust-Oleum Epoxy Shield, America's best-selling premium garage floor coating, the National Traffic Safety Administration, and Capital One. What's in your wallet? We are still under a yellow caution flag here at Watkins Glen. Frankitti's car has been picked up by the Motor Club and has been put back. We'll see if he can continue, Marty. It's rather interesting to see what's going on out there, my friend.
I didn't know AAA was working today. Thank you, Brent. Let's check in with Jamie Little.
Well, guys, we showed Buddy Rice a little while ago spin. When Dario Franchitti spun in front of him, it caused Buddy to spin on the grass, and the team had a little bit of communication with him just a moment ago.
Stay out if your tires are okay. Are we going green or not? No, no green, no green, no green. Are we staying out or are we pitting? Everything's okay on the car. Stay out then. If everything's okay on the car, stay out.
Well, Buddy Rice, you heard there, a little antsy. He wants to come in. He wants to know what's happening. Now, the team told him stay out because we're the last car on the lead lap. We cannot go a lap down. So right now they're keeping him out, guys, and they really don't know if there's any damage to the car.
Well, we can see it from here, Jamie. There is a minor damage on the front wing plate on the right side, and by staying out, he has actually cycled up to 12th position because you got to remember Castroneves, Matsuura, Carpenter, Sharp, Simmons, Hornish, Franchitti, they're all behind him now.
And we might add that damage on the front wing is very minor, too, I think. We've seen worse than this before. Some stuff we've seen of Scott Dixon's wing at St. Petersburg didn't seem to affect him much, so I don't think it's that big a deal.
You heard the call. The pace car will be pulling off this time by, and Johnny Rutherford will pull over there. That is turn 9. So they'll head for turn 10, and Tomas Scheckter will be the race leader. He'll set the pace again. It'll be
blue one.
It'll be Tony Kanaan, Scott Dixon, Vitor Meira, Marco Andretti, and Ryan Briscoe, the top 6. Here we go. They come through turn 11. We're back to green flag racing.
Green.
I love the jump that Tomas Scheckter gets every time coming through 9, 10, and 11.
Oh, and Danica spins coming out of turn 11.
Fever, man, seriously.
Well, the saying goes, yellows breed yellows and cautions breed cautions. Term it any way you want, but sometimes it's just so difficult to get these things started once you've had a pack up like this.
Now the question is, we have not gone full yellow.
What's the deal?
Now we have just gone full yellow. Oh no! And more trouble out on the track. That's Kosuke Matsuura and Jeff Simmons.
And that's a major one.
Yep, I'm all right.
And that's on the exit of 1, so they didn't even get out of 1 towards 2. You can see the tire barrier on your left-hand side is also actually come apart over here, which is what they've hit.
So we have incidents at 2 different sections of the racetrack. Let's go back and check on what happened to Danica first.
This is looking on the exit of 11, and she has lost the car in the middle of the turn. Now, we don't know if she got touched on the back of the car to spin her around or if she was just carrying too much speed. Here we go. She was fighting the wheel.
All right, let's go to the other end of this stretch, down into turns 1 and 2, and keep an eye out for Jeff Simmons. There's Danica first off. We're looking for the 55, Kosuke Matsuura. There he is in the back. Jeff Simmons in the back as well.
55 Panasonic car of Kosuke Matsuura on your left-hand side. We'll have to see he's going into the turn. Back on the power. Gets the car maybe to be a little wiggling. Oh, yeah, just back on the power. The back end starts to wiggle itself just a little bit, and boy, did he get up there.
And this one's not Jeff Simmons' fault at all, guys. I mean, we've documented the fact that he has had tough luck, but this one's Kosuke's.
Well, actually, let's go back and even think as we watch again with Kosuke right on board. You can see how the car gets up in the air. But Jeff Simmons, remember the situation also in Japan where he was actually taken out with Scott Sharp going around in front of him, which actually is Kosuke's.
I want to get the thing started. Lose a lap here. Not lose a lap here.
Jamie?
Well, guys, Danica Patrick in her pit box. You can see they're replacing that front wing there. I asked Ray Lito, her engineer, what happened. He said Danica just said something about Eddie Cheever hitting her. So we're going to have to get more on that story, but they're going to get her up and running and get her back out, guys.
All right, it's our 4th caution of the day. And you just heard Danica's opinion of Eddie Cheever. So, I guess there won't be any Christmas dinner shared between the two of them here on lap 21 of 60 at Watkins Glen. We're going to go side by side as we're under our 4th caution of the day here at Watkins Glen. All right, you see a bunch of the cars that have decided to take advantage of this 4th caution period. Tony Kanaan being amongst them, as is Scott Dixon and Vitor Miro, Marco Andretti, Ryan Briscoe. They're going to cycle through. Our leader, Tomas Scheckter, has been out there for 17 laps, longer than everybody, and he is still in the race lead. Dan Wheldon's going to cycle up to 2nd spot, as he has not pitted for 13 laps. So we'll find out how this shakes out. While we've got a moment, let's talk a little horse racing. It's the Triple Crown's oldest race, the ultimate test of stamina for the world's top thoroughbreds. Join ABC Sports' exclusive live coverage of the 138th running of the Belmont Stakes. It's Saturday at 5 Eastern. We've got horsepower of a different kind here at Watkins Glen. Do you like this strategy call by Vision Racing, keeping Scheckter out there? I mean, he's been out there 17 laps now.
Well, quite a few underneath yellow, obviously, and only they will know what type of fuel mileage that they're getting and how much fuel is left in the tank and how much further they can go. But you might question what they're doing, but let's remember, there seems to be so many yellows in this race right now that they are betting that there will be more yellows and to be able to pit underneath caution, Rusty Wallace, instead of having to pit underneath green.
I totally agree with you. On a green flag pit stop in this racetrack, you're not going to lose a lap. So if he comes down pit road, but right now we're working lap 21, he comes down pit road, these cars run between 21 and 23 laps on fuel. He's not going to lose a lap. So I'd stay out there, stay ahead of all the problem. His tires have got a lot of heat in them. Probably a good call.
And he's had 8 laps under yellow so far, so remember that increases fuel mileage. Let's revisit the Danica Patrick story. You heard her right before the break talk about the fact that she thought Eddie Cheever got into her, which brought out our 4th caution. She is back out on the racetrack, but she has lost a lap. Let's go back to see if we can see it. Here's our camera.
See, and she is already spinning around. Hard to say if she was actually touched by another car. Now the 51 of Eddie Cheever was directly behind her. We did not see any damage on the back of her car, but she seemed to think that it was definitely going to be something that Eddie did.
All this stupid. This is ridiculous out there. Cheever is an idiot.
So she felt it was ridiculous out there, and as you heard, she thinks Eddie's an idiot.
Well,
plain and simple.
Our replay was pretty good, and we saw Danica spinning, and we saw Eddie Cheever right up her tailpipe, so to speak, decelerating. And she called Eddie Cheever an idiot, Scott Goodyear. So I would say that she felt like she got tapped from him to lose it like that.
I think she did, and you know, she sent him to trial and already gave him a sentence.
All right, Tomas Scheckter and the Vision team have decided they're going to pit late in this yellow, and this may be able to give them a lot more fuel and a few more laps over the rest of the field, but they are going to surrender a lot of track position.
You know, that I don't understand that. That just puts you back in all the muck that's going on back there.
Nobody's falling you out. Still got wreckers and pit in and pit out. They'll be on your right. A lot of debris down there.
If you had it pitted with the lead group previously, then you'd be with the lead group and been leading the charge here.
So he has dropped back all the way to 14th, and you may be right, Scott, because you know, there's a lot of cars that are only one lap earlier that they all pitted. Dan Wheldon right now, he hasn't pitted for 14 laps. He is our race leader. Bryan Herta, who also has not pitted, is 2nd, and Eddie Cheever is in 3rd, followed by Buddy Rice. That's right, Buddy is right now in 4th, but those 4 cars have not pitted. We're going to go side by side as this 4th caution continues, and Dan Wheldon is out front. Just about ready to go back to green flag racing. Don't forget to tune in this Saturday. That's right, it's a night race, 9 Eastern on ESPN. The IndyCar Series heads to Dallas for the Bombardier Learjet 500. Saturday, June 10th, 9 Eastern on ESPN. And if you have seen the races at Texas, you know what to expect. We'll have another shootout down the stretch to the stripe. All right, right now, Dan Wheldon is our race leader as we have completed 23 laps. And as he continues down towards the toe of the boot, he has some very distinct memories of racing here at the Glen.
It's always a very special place, especially when you clinch your first IndyCar Series championship, and you know that's something that's very special to me. But we're a long ways from that right now, and we need to you know, we need to knuckle down and make sure we've got good race cars in, you know, not just the road course races, but all the races for the remainder of the season, and make sure we capitalize on them when we have good cars.
You should remember this race was in the fall last year. That's why Dan was able to clinch the championship. As let's check in now with Dr. Jerry Punch.
And guys, Dan Weldon has only made one pit stop today. That coming back on lap number 8. And a moment ago, Chip Ganassi says they're getting such good fuel mileage with this pace in the race and the rain conditions. They believe they can make this fuel last and make it on one more stop. That's why they've stayed out. They believe also they need to keep some heat in the tires because the track is not hot enough. The tires are cold and you're slipping, particularly on restarts, guys.
We just saw Dan twitch a little bit through turn 10, in through 11.
Green flag, starter, green flag.
And we're back to green flag racing at Watkins Glen.
Oh, this doesn't look like it's going to be good.
Oh, hold on. In the mix. That is the number 9 car. Whoa, you're on board with Marco Andretti. Right in front of him was Scott Dixon.
I'll tell you what, that kid's not scared of anything. I mean, he jumped out there, Scott, and he had that rear end dangling all over the place, going down into turn 1, rear end hung out, coming off of turn 1. He is on it. I'm amazed how aggressive he is.
But you see, he cannot put the power down. Remember that first pit stop? He came out and the car has never been the same since. Again, he cannot get the power down. He just keeps backing up every time he gets in a pack of cars.
But he keeps trying it. He keeps trying to put the power down, and he really gets himself right to the edge of disaster, it looks like, right before he gathers it all back up and gets that old pony going straight ahead again, you know?
Well, that's the great thing about being 19 years old. He hasn't crashed enough to have all those bad memories. That's Vitor Meira in the number 4 trying to get underneath Eddie Cheever. Can't get it done. And as we go on board with Tony Kanaan, let's get an update on Vitor Meira, who's right in front of him there, Jack.
Fellas, remember, Vitor Meira and the Panther Racing team started out the season without a sponsor. In fact, just to pay the bills as Meira darts to the inside to get another position, he, over Eddie Cheever, and Tony Kanaan follows him here, they had an auction in the offseason to try and sell off equipment to keep racing. They had Harris on the car at the Indianapolis 500. This Tuesday, they will be meeting with the Harris people to find out if they will get enough funding to be able to continue for the season. Vitor Meira is good on equipment, and that's one of the reasons why Panther chose him to drive this season.
And right now, Vitor running in the top 10. They are on board right now with Tony Kanaan. Kanaan in the 7th spot last time by the stripe.
You know, I don't understand why.
Bypass him, but you got time. Bypass when you got time.
Little conversation there going on. You know, I don't understand why Vitor Meira doesn't have a sponsor, as good as that car's been. And look,
Marco just made a bonsai move down the inside. He made the pass, but he had so much speed he had to give up the corner, and Tony Kanaan got right back around him.
And what he ended up doing was actually moving Ryan Briscoe off the road too, and Ryan Briscoe got held up with speed in the number 5 Ryan Bull Escort car. He's now turning around and losing a bit of space with Marco, who we're riding with right now.
Guys, what I'm trying to figure out, here goes Tomas Scheckter trying to dive down low into the chicane. He's going to make the pass. That's around Dario Franchitti. Franchitti is 2 laps down, so not a factor for the race win. What I'm wondering, guys, let's go back and take a look. Why are these guys forcing this issue? We haven't even reached the halfway mark.
They're race drivers. You want to be in front of the car that's in front of you, Marty. Rusty, tell him how this works.
These guys are trying real hard. I will tell you, it always seems like it's Marco Andretti being the most aggressive one. Well, he's the youngest. I guess he's supposed to be that way. But look at this. Tail end hung out, holding on to it again, still in the throttle, got the thing pointed straight, pulling in behind his teammate.
Now just think if he had to turn around and hit Eddie Cheever. Remember St. Petersburg?
He's going after Kanaan again. This time he gets him. That's in turn 8. Now he's got Eddie Cheever. And he's not patient at all right now, and this could come back to haunt him.
Michael needs to be watching this on television, watching what we're doing. Get on the radio and say, Marco, you got a hot rod there. Slow that thing down a little bit, man. You're a little aggressive. But, hey, you know what? I got a feeling it's like talking to my own kid. You talk forever and ever and ever. They listen to about 1/8 of what you're telling them, and just got to let them go out there and have their own problems before they figure it out.
Here it is, going down the front straightaway against Eddie Cheever. He's got the line, and he'll make the pass stick. A little further back, you saw Tomas Scheckter take a look around Felipe Giafoni, couldn't get it done. Saw the statistic there on Eddie, the oldest driver in the race at age 48. And Marco is pulling away from him now. So Marco's moved up to 7th. Here comes Tony Kanaan around Eddie Cheever as they head down for the chicane. He's got the spot. And that's Ryan Briscoe now in the number 5, closing on the 51 of Eddie Cheever. And then Scheckter is right behind Briscoe. And Scheckter on the move again.
You gotta like what Ryan Briscoe has done. He came here, jumped in the car, had not been back in an IndyCar since that horrific accident back in Chicago last year. And the guy said he just jumped in there, went fast right away on the road course. He's a road course specialist. A guy that deserves a great opportunity to be back in IndyCar. There's a lot of talent for that young driver.
The problem with Briscoe, guys, though, if you remember, in 14 races last year, he had 7 crashes. That's in the race, not counting the ones he had in practice. And that you just can't tear up that much equipment.
Well, one thing about Briscoe, he was able to run the Daytona prototypes yesterday, Marty. He had a lot of experience. He ran 6 hours on that racetrack trying to figure out what this thing does in the rain. So he understands what this course is doing right now.
He just got around Eddie Cheever, picked up another spot. You know, we talked about the fact he crashed 7 times. Let's take you back to the last time he raced in the IndyCar Series. It was last year at Chicagoland Speedway, and this is what happened.
Just got touching tires to tires, always sends cars up into the fence area. Now the car disintegrated. Watch the red and white car. That's Ryan Briscoe going up over the Red Bull car driven by Alex Barron. And in this situation here, Ryan just started to walk itself up the road a little bit, got into Alex, ended up putting himself into the fence, but he ended up having some injuries, but he obviously was returned.
It amazes me how safe these cars are. These things are incredibly safe, these race cars are, Scott. I mean, you see that wreck that Briscoe just took, and he's sitting in that tub, you know, all together still.
Let's check more from Jamie.
Well, guys, you just saw that wreck Ryan Briscoe went through last year, and amazingly enough, he walked away from it and suffered from methanol inhalation and singed his lungs a little bit. Now, he is so excited to be back out here racing, you guys. It's the first time we've seen him in an Indy car since that crash. Now, he's set out here on a road course. He feels great. Now, if he goes back to an oval, he's not so sure how he's going to do, but he definitely is looking for a ride for the rest of the year.
All right, Jamie, and right now Ryan Briscoe running in the 9th position, right behind Tony Kanaan.
You know, a little earlier I was talking about Vitor Mira being unsponsored. I don't understand why that car is unsponsored, because if I was Harris, I'd get on that thing pretty quick. Somebody's going to pick that guy up pretty fast. He's been really, really good the whole year.
We're on board with Marco Andretti right now as Marco is running in the 6th position. Let's check in and see how Dad's heart rate's doing. Let's go down to the pits.
Well, I would bet if you took Michael's pulse right now, it would be about 125 as they flash by. I've not seen you smile so much in a long time. This young man's being very aggressive. Any concerns?
No, he's just doing a great job. You know, driving really well, some good clean passes, and hopefully he can keep it going all day.
When you saw him make the move a moment ago under Tony Kanaan on the restart, I know no one talks to him on those restarts, but what would you like to say? Would you like him to be a little more patient?
No, he's going for it. I mean, that's what he's supposed to do, you know, so, no, I'm happy with what he's doing.
Even as a dad, you knew he was good when you saw him a few years ago. Did you have any idea he'd be this good, like the first time coming to Watkins Glen?
I didn't know he'd be this strong, to be honest with you. I thought it would take a year to get to this point, so he's going ahead of schedule right now.
Obviously, we'll let you go back and watch Marco. That's Michael Andretti, his dad. And by the way, a moment ago on the radio, they just told him you are the fastest car on the racetrack. Marco Andretti is coming in a hurry, guys.
His last lap at 1:39 as he is running now in the 6th position. Up front it is Dan Weldon, followed by Bryan Herta, Elio Castroneves, Scott Dixon, and Vitor Mira. That is your top 5, and there is Dan Weldon. His lead over second place Herta is 3.4 seconds. As you look down from high above, he continues to motor around, heading towards the completion of another lap. We'll be back after this word from our ABC stations.
The Watkins Glen Indy Grand Prix on ABC Sports is brought to you by Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% on car insurance. Firestone Tires, a tradition of innovation. XM Satellite Radio, the exclusive satellite radio partner of the Indy Racing League. And the Home Depot. You can do it, we can help. Marty, 4 cautions for 11 laps. We've had 4 different leaders and 3 lead changes with Dan Weldon on top right now.
You're right, Brand. He leads by 2.3 seconds over Elio Castroneves. Then a tight battle between Castroneves and Scott Dixon for 3rd. And Vitor Mira and Marco Andretti rounds out the top 5. Let's get you caught up to speed with the Triple J Ranch. It'll be Jack, Jerry, and Jamie, and Dr. Jared Punch up first.
All right, thank you, Marty. Dan Weldon playing a bit of a strategy game, a roll of the dice on fuel there. He has not pitted since lap number 8, so they can only make it probably anywhere from 5 to 7 more laps. They will have to make their second and final stop of the day. Dan Weldon leading, but will have to make a pit stop, which should be the last one of the day. Hopes he can win it possibly on fuel strategy. Jack?
Well, Jerry, if and when Dan Weldon pits, Elio Castroneves will take the lead. Elio Castroneves has been topping off, remember. He likes his car as it stands right now. Most important thing for this team was to get several laps of green flag action. Once they got that, the tires came up to temperature, and all of a sudden, Elio Castroneves has been on a tear. Doc?
Well, the teammate of Dan Weldon, Scott Dixon, pitted on lap 21. He's last year's winner here. He loves this racetrack. He knows that if you're patient, this track will come to you. Dixon now sitting in 3rd spot, driving the new colors of Energizer on his car today. He thinks he can go probably to within 10 laps of the checkered flag before having to stop again. And maybe if the yellows fall correctly, Dixon can win 2 in a row.
Doc, Vitor Meira feels the heat. Not from the competition at first, but the heat to try and stay competitive. They have short-fueled this car. They have filled it up with fuel. They have kept putting the whip to this diminutive, jockey-sized driver from Brazil. But just moments ago, Doc, they radioed to him that the car behind him, they said, Vitor, it's Marco Andretti, and he's running on a tear. Doc?
Marco Andretti has impressed everyone, including his father and grandfather here today. You heard Michael tell me they thought he would be good, but they had no idea he'd be this good this quickly. They thought it would take him a year to grasp a very difficult, historic Watkins Glen International Raceway. But Marco Andretti getting it done, moving in on Vitor Meira, hoping to make that pass for position in the next couple of laps. And Tony Kanaan, the guy behind him, we thought Tony would be good all afternoon. Tony playing a bit of a waiting game now. He will have to make one more pit stop. Remember, Tony Kanaan did not put tires on in that last stop, fuel only. He said it was too cool, they couldn't keep temperature in the tires. So Tony has been tiptoeing a little bit, trying to grip the racetrack and stay in position until the final stop. Now behind Tony Kanaan, a problem all afternoon for his teammate Bryan Herta. Bryan Herta's complained that his visor is fogged up inside. They have opened the visor. They've tried to crack it to get some air in it. He is having a very, very difficult time seeing in that XM satellite car. But in spite of the limited vision, Bryan Herta doing one heck of a job. Jamie?
And Ryan Briscoe doing one heck of a job as well, Doc. We talked about him a few moments ago. It's the first time he's been in an Indy car all year. He started 10th and he's working his way up, guys. Right now he's sitting 8th. All is well. The team is thrilled. This is the best they have seen, the number 5 car this year. Right behind him, Tomas Scheckter. We've talked about him a lot today. He was the first man to come in and switch off those rain tires, get the slicks on. He was out in front, and right now they have him. Their strategy, guys, they came in, they're out of pit sequence, and they hope that if this turns into a timed event, they're going to be good on fuel. Now, Buddy Rice in 10th right now. He is scheduled to come in for fuel and tires any minute now. His last pit stop was lap 9. Lap 9, I should say, and that was despite his spin, guys. He never did come in to get checked for damage. They kept him out, and it's paying off so far. Guys?
So that gets you up to speed with our top 10. You're on board with Dan Weldon as he leads by half a second over Elio Castroneves, who just ran the fastest lap at over 125 miles an hour. We're going to go side by side so that you won't miss a thing.
Welcome back to the Watkins Glen Indy Grand Prix. 25 laps to go, and your leader, Dan Weldon, on pit road, making his final stop of the afternoon. They have got to get it full of fuel. He has got to go 25 laps, which is the absolute max. They hold. He is down and away. Great pit stop, 10 seconds flat for Dan Weldon.
All right, thanks, Doc. As Dan comes back out, your new leader is Elio Castroneves with Scott Dixon right behind him, and Marco Andretti in 3rd. And Marco's running laps at 1.5 seconds quicker than the race leaders. He's reeling these front 2 in, guys.
You know, we talked about Marco earlier. You know, he just looks wild out there, but we can't tell him it's doing it wrong. I mean, he's making it work. I'll tell you what, it just looks wicked.
The third car you saw in that freight train is Sam Hornish. We should point out, he is a lap down. If he can get back up ahead of Elio Castroneves and a yellow comes out, Sam gets his lap back. Let's get more from Jack Arute.
It helps if you've got a teammate that is in the lead. Elio Castroneves leading Scott Dixon as they circle around this 3+ mile road course, and Roger Penske cautioned Sam Hornish to let him know, look, stay with Elio. If we get a yellow, you'll get the pass by. Then all of a sudden, he saw that Dixon was there and suggested, just kind of hard, that maybe Sam ought to pass to get right behind Elio. But it's all going to go away, fellas, in about 2.5 laps, because Castroneves is scheduled to come on the pit road then. So if there isn't a yellow in 2.5 laps, that hard suggestion will be for naught.
Strategy continues to unfold, and that's what we were talking about. The rain creates different scenarios, that and all the crashes that we've had.
And that usually plays out in the pit lane. Everybody has to come up with their own strategy, and we've seen that today. But, you know, I look at Sam Hornish Jr. right now, who's running the same speed as the two leaders, and just disappointing for him to have that miscue early on, because that's put him a lap down when he really possibly might just be in contention at this event.
Right now we're holding for Marco Andretti. There he is. Marco is the Capital One, no hassle, fastest lap of the race so far. You can see it right there on lap 36, 127 and change. And he is closing, guys. He's another 0.6 of a second on Scott Dixon, who's in second place. I mean, he is flogging that horse.
I love the line that he's running, because he's running a combination of a dry line and wet line. So he's figured out exactly what turns have grip, what turns do not, where he needs to place his race car, and it just becomes a mental exercise to do it perfectly each time around, and he is obviously getting that.
As we take a look at the Firestone telemetry, boy, he's just working that car.
Yeah, I'm waiting for the 10,300. These guys are trying to get max RPM. They're up about 9,800, close to 10,000 RPM, 100% throttle. So you can tell the track's, he's wide open through here. The track's really drying good right now, so these guys have finally built some rhythm. They got some good rhythm going on right now. They know where their passing zones is, and now they're able to take advantage of all of them.
All right, so there is Elio Castroneves down through turn 1 with Scott Dixon right behind him, and then Sam Hornish still a lap down. Now we got word that Dan Weldon went through the chicane. Whoa, that's a good reason why.
Just carrying the speed into the turn. Remember, he just came out of the pit lane. Those tires are cold. He doesn't have an opportunity to actually get through the bus stop, as we call it. But right now, he comes through. He has to stop, wait for the car on the right to pass through. He will not get a penalty for that, because he's not improved his position.
All right, here's the battle for the race lead. It is the first Team Penske car of Elio Castroneves, followed by Scott Dixon in the Energizer paint scheme. That's a one-off for that car. It'll be back in target red when we go to Texas. And then Sam Hornish still trying to get around Scott Dixon so he can get his lap back.
As we heard earlier, Roger Penske's already calculating everything he needs to do to help his driver get his lap back. He told him a little while ago, calm down, let's gather our thoughts back together. And right now he's talking to Elio, he's talking to Sam, he's trying to figure out how can I get this guy back in the lead lap. And you know what, Scott? I wouldn't bet against him, because that man's pretty smart.
Well, I like what Sam's doing right now, because he's putting pressure on Scott Dixon, the guy that won here last year and is a road course specialist, Marty.
So we are about 4 laps away from seeing some guys pit again, including our race leader. This is our longest stretch of green flag racing. Stay with us as we go side by side, because things are really getting good as Elio is up front. Back here at Watkins Glen, we're under our 5th caution. You saw it on side by side, a very frustrated and angry Marco Andretti, and we believe the man he is angry at is that man right there, Eddie Cheever. Let's take you back and show you what happened.
Remember, all the lead cars have actually been passed. Whoa! That is a big put off. All the lead cars had actually just gone past Eddie Cheever previously, and Marco Andretti running is so much faster than Eddie Cheever. And Eddie starts to come over, which is a normal line, but you got to know that Marco's behind you, because you would have seen him coming up in the mirrors.
Well, it looked like he was right side by side with him. Let's see. We'll go on board with Marco.
It looked like Marco got right up alongside him, and Cheever just didn't know he was there and just come over. They're side by side right now. Here comes Cheever right over. Guys, I'll tell you what, it's hard to see out of these cars. So I know Eddie didn't mean that on purpose, that's for sure. But you know, this isn't the first time these two guys got together. If I remember correctly, St. Pete in practice, they had something like that happen also.
Yeah, they did, and each blamed the other, and I'm sure you're probably going to get two versions on this one as well. Look at Marco.
This was him getting out just a little bit earlier, shaking his fist, looking over towards the direction of Eddie Cheever.
Cheever's out of the car. Everybody's okay. The cars are hurt, wounded, and they're both out of the race. Let's go to Doc.
Well, they're bowling over down here in the Marco Andretti pits. And, Dad, you just saw the replay. Your thoughts?
The guy's a waste. You know, he did it on purpose. It's so blatant. I mean, he does it all the time whenever any of us come up behind. A guy doesn't belong out on the racetrack. Complete idiot.
What do you do now? What can you do about what happened on the track? What do you do?
What do you do? The guy shouldn't even be allowed to be on the racetrack. You know, it's just a shame. Feels so bad for Marco. He's driving a hell of a race, and a guy like that just blatantly takes the kid out. I mean, just stupid.
All right, a lot of frustration down here from Michael Andretti, and they were throwing things and very, very angry. And, of course, that is one side of the story, but you see from the monitor as Eddie Cheever climbs out of the car there, and obviously he's got to be as frustrated. Well, he wanted to get a finish here, and may not run many more events unless they can find sponsorship, but a frustrating day for Eddie as well.
There's two drivers now that consider Eddie an idiot. As you heard earlier, it was Danica Patrick, and now Michael Andretti, who just came off his third-place finish. We're on board with Danica right now. You know, Marco had cut the lead in 6 laps from 8.9 seconds to just over 4. He was coming.
But let's go back to the Danica Patrick situation first off. We're not clear that Eddie Cheever actually ended up touching the back of the car. I mean, when I look at that replay, I would say possibly not, because we did see the front of Eddie's car after that incident, and there was no marks on the front of the car or the wing. So, you know, that is in question now. The line that Eddie was taking, Rusty, was a normal line, but you know something, like I said, going into the turn previously, you have to know that he is coming up so fast, a lot faster than you, and then maybe you don't expect him to actually surprise you on the right-hand side like that, but you know something? You have to be aware of your surroundings when you're out there.
Yeah, I don't want to beat up on Eddie Cheever right now, that's for sure, because, you know, we don't know exactly what happened with the Danica Patrick incident, like you said. And the closure rate with Marco was coming up on Eddie so fast on the outside, and that is kind of a blind spot. Although you're right, he should have known he was coming to him, so I don't know. You can sure see the father and Michael Andretti coming out, though, the anger.
Well, you've got the oldest driver in the field and the youngest driver in the field, and their minds aren't meeting.
You have a major disaster, don't you, when that happens, because it's, as Danica Patrick said about Richard Petty a couple weeks ago, must be a big generation gap or something. I don't know.
Well, we should tell everyone Eddie had just pitted. He was on his out lap, which obviously means cold tires. And again, like you pointed out, we didn't have a conclusive video in the first one, and I'm sure you're going to get a different version when we get a chance to talk to Eddie. He may not have expected Marco to go on that side of him, because obviously the next corner was a left-hander. But right now we're going to have pit stops, and here comes everybody. So the Triple J Ranch, you guys better be warmed up and ready to go. Dr. Jerry Punch, you're up first.
And guys, the winner of this off-pit road action could end up having a shot at winning the race here. Final pit stop of the afternoon. You're right along with the 711 Honda machine of Tony Kanaan. Right in front of him, the Energizer car pitting of Scott Dixon. Watch the fuelers of Kanaan. Got to get it full of fuel. 4 tires on. Can he beat this now? Here's Kanaan.
Meanwhile, Elio Castroneves having trouble filling the car with fuel. Moved in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 position. It looked to be a nominal stop, fellas, and then all of a sudden, the fuel man did not get the fuel hose seated properly. They waited, and they lost valuable time.
Well, and another guy who has lost is Dan Weldon. He's still sitting in the pits, and they're not making any kind of move to get him refired. So we're going to have to find out what happened to Weldon, as he pitted in 6th and is now going to go at least probably 1 lap down. There is his teammate Scott Dixon. We'll have to sort this all out. Right now it's they're showing Buddy Rice as the race leader. We'll get it all sorted out for you. Stay with us. We're at Watkins Glen International, and we'll be back after this word from our ABC station.
I just can't wait to get on the road again.
Back at Watkins Glen, I'm Brett Musburger. Let's get you up to date. Earlier in the race, Danica Patrick spun again, but she is still running. Meanwhile, Matsura and Simmons got tangled up, and they are both gone from the race. And then just a short time ago, Eddie Cheever bumped Marco Andretti out of the race, touching off a controversy. Then Weldon encountered trouble down in the pits, and Jack Arute, you're down there with our leader, Castroneves. He was coming back in. What happened down there?
Well, Elio Castroneves actually did not get any fuel, 0 gallons in his 30-gallon fuel cell, so he had to come back in and take on as much fuel as they possibly could pack into that car. Meanwhile, an update on it looks like Elio Castroneves may be having some fuel problems, but he's not saying anything as he continues to slosh it back and forth. Dan Weldon broke a half shaft. Brent, this is not what you want, and Tim Cindric just told Elio, look, we're going to be racing for points now. Doc?
Well, as you take a look down here in the Target Ganassi pits, Dan Weldon has climbed out of his car. And Jack, as you said a moment ago, that's indeed what has happened. Weldon has broken a half shaft. They were on a great fuel strategy, possibly to steal one today for 2 weeks in a row. Last week in Indianapolis, he led 148 laps, only to cut a tire with less than 15 laps to go to take him out of contention for the win. And here today, a broken half shaft as they're leaving pit road, and they have to park it here in the final 20 laps at Watkins Glen. Guys?
All right, thanks, Doc. Jack, let's go back and listen to the audio as we tune in on Dan Weldon's last pit stop when everything went south.
Keep coming. Focus on Dave here. Broken the drive shaft. Broken the drive shaft. Drive shaft. Broken drive shaft.
So you could hear it right there as the R's came up and the car didn't move more than a few inches.
The drive shaft is something that Marco Andretti had a problem with for the first couple of races, and basically the drive shaft is on both sides of the transmission at the back of the car. You break one of them and the car will not move.
Same thing as a half shaft.
So for Dan Weldon, who finished 16th at St. Pete when he failed to finish there, he's going to fail to finish on the road course here, and it means right now second in the points, and of course with Elio Castroneves, our points leader, having a problem on the pit stop, we could see a shuffle in the points championship chase as we get ready to go side by side, as we're going to show you Lake Seneca here at Watkins Glen. It is beautiful up here, even when it's overcast. Thursday night, it's game 1 of the NBA Finals with the Miami Heat taking on the Dallas Mavericks. Coverage begins prime time, 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific, right here on ABC. What do you like, guys? I like Miami. I think Shaq and Dwayne Wade going to do it.
Once the Pacers were out, baby, I stopped watching.
I'm not going anywhere in that one, man. No way.
All right, what's going on here with these guys? I mean, they are well back behind the pace.
Well, I'll tell you what they're doing right now. The 3-car of Elio Castroneves is working the steering wheel, trying to warm the tires up, letting the pack get further ahead from him, and then he's going to gas it and get the car up to a higher speed to help warm those tires up. So we watch this now. He'll carry some more speed going through the bus stop. And smart move, but you can only do it if you're at the back of the pack.
Jack, you've got more?
Yes, Scott, in addition to that, the reason that they lay back like that, the drivers have discovered that if they ride the brakes real hard and continue to rev the engine and kind of do the old short track routine, that it helps them to be able to put some heat in them, and then they can come up to speed. But so far, it's taken an awful long time, Doc Punch, for these two to do it.
And Jack, one driver who's been up to speed all afternoon until a few minutes ago was Marco Andretti. Marco, sorry about what we saw on the replay a moment ago, but from your vantage point, what happened?
Blatant, absolutely on purpose deal. And if he's, he's gonna of course say he didn't know I was there, then he doesn't need to be in this series. I'm sorry. If he didn't know I was there, come on, that's a little scary. You're in the wrong business, buddy.
Will you be able to go talk to Eddie Cheever or discuss this at all between now and the next few days?
It won't be a discussion, I'll tell you that. There's nothing to talk about. I mean, the guy is unbelievable. The NYC car was a contender for the win. It's a bummer.
Would you have had a car to be up front and maybe contend for these last few laps and been a factor?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, the car felt so good. The guys were doing an awesome job in the pits. One more pit stop and we settle in and we go do it. I mean, I feel like I did have the fastest car on the racetrack.
Hey, thanks for your time, Marco.
Thanks.
And Jerry, he is absolutely right. He did have the fastest car because he had just turned the fastest lap of the race right before the crash at 127.8. miles an hour.
He's a very confident individual, and he's fast. He told you, I've got the fastest car, and I'm mad, and he's wrong, and that's the youngness coming out of him. I can't fault him for that. I know it's frustrating.
All right, it looks like we're still waiting for the wave by, I think, for Danica, or did they send her around already? They sent her around already, so Danica's going to be back on the tail end of the lead lap. And we have just been given word that this will now be a time race.
57 laps.
You just heard him on the radio.
How much time's left?
30 minutes left. 30 minutes.
So basically, we're
it's less than that. It's 25.
We're looking at about 12 more laps of racing, but it is now an official timed race. The maximum it could go would be 2 hours from green. We have 5 yellows. Here is the length of race. We were originally scheduled for 60 laps or 2 hours, and IRL President Bryan Herta has said, nope, we've got to shorten this. It will be a timed race. So this is our 5th yellow for a total of 18 laps when we go back to green flag racing. And there is Buddy Rice. Now remember, he has already had 1 off today, but he is in the race lead, but he has 11 laps less on fuel than a lot of other guys out there. I mean, he pitted 11 laps ago last time.
And I think we have to point out also that he is aboard a Panos chassis when most other people are driving Delaras, and they have taken delivery of some new Delara chassis, which the whole Rahal Letterman team will start using next week at the Texas Super Speedway, that high-banked mile-and-a-half racetrack, because they feel that they are a better car in oval trim than the Panos. So look for them to be maybe a little bit more competitive starting in Texas on the ovals, Rusty.
And one thing we must point out too, Buddy Rice, who is in the Panos, Scott Dixon is also in the Panos also. Even though that team generally has the Delara chassis, they have saved only the road race cars that are Panoses for these road races. Now, Chip Ganassi really feels like the Delara is a better oval track car, but they had really good success with this Panos chassis last year, Scott. He decided not to spend the money, keep the notes, because the testing is very, very limited. That's the reason they're staying. They got very, very good notes. They haven't had any problem. As you can see, he's in second place right now. So that plan is pretty good.
Now. Should be green this time.
All right, so the pace car will be signaling, and there goes Johnny Rutherford. Buddy Rice has control of the field. It is Rice, Dixon, then Bryan Herta, Tony Kanaan, Vitor Meira, and Tomas Scheckter. That's your top 6.
Don't throw the green once you exit 11.
That's turn 10. 1 right-hander. Here we go.
Oh, Dixon's very close to Rice.
Green, green, green.
Back to green flag racing at Watkins Glen. A couple guys took a peek, but said, nope, not going to get it done. No, and Dario Franchitti and Tomas Scheckter have contact, and both of them are off. Scheckter's still under power. He's down in the wet stuff right there. He gets back on the course.
Still green, clear behind.
But it looks like, is Dario able to get his car going? Meanwhile, the course stays green, and here comes a battle for the race lead. Down into the bus stop chicane, and it will be Dixon taking it over. Oh, in contact with Kanaan as he gets the wing plate, and Bryan Herta. They come together, the teammates.
Now that's enough damage with that wing there that he'll certainly slow the car down because of that. Remember, we talked about Buddy Rice having a damaged wing, but his wing did not affect his car's handling.
Vitor Meira has already gone around Tony Kanaan. For Kanaan, remember, he finished 2nd here last year. And here comes Ryan Briscoe around him. So Kanaan is backing up quickly. Let's go back and take another look.
Go down the straightaway. Remember, we're just having the restart, a little bit cold tires. He actually makes a big dive down the center. That's a bold move, especially against somebody like Bryan Herta, who is a road course specialist himself. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense because although he was carrying speed, here we watch it again, trying down the inside. Bryan Herta didn't probably even expect it, running a perfect line, Bryan Herta was, but took off the front nose for the 7-Eleven car.
And it looked like it cut Herta's right rear tire, Rusty.
Oh, this is a bad day for Andretti Green Racing. First, you got Kanaan. You've had Marco. You've had Herta. These guys are all going down. I wouldn't want to go back in that airplane tonight, Scott.
Well, they're on this, like you say, teammates right there. That's an unfortunate situation. Here we see the number 2 car of Tomas Scheckter actually trying to dive on the inside of the 27, the Klein Tool car of Dario Franchitti. He couldn't make that one work.
All right, let's check in with Jerry Punch. Here comes Tony Kanaan.
And a very disappointed Tony Kanaan. He knew he had about 10 laps to go. As you see the crew now, they're working on the car here. Jeff Simon holding the new nose piece. They slide it on. They'll use those quick attached bolts. They get the wrenches on, 2 big clicks. And now Tony Kanaan is down and away. He will not lose a lap, but he lost a lot of time here to the field here with the time running out.
Yeah, he lost his chance to win pretty much unless another yellow comes out. Meanwhile, the race continues out on course, as it is Scott Dixon leading Buddy Rice, Vitor Mira, and Ryan Briscoe has moved up to 4th, guys. So here is your new race leader, Scott Dixon. And this is a familiar tune for this lad. Remember, he won here last year.
Now, if Dixon can keep it on the course right now, this will be a big-time redemption for Chip Ganassi Racing last week after all the disappointments in Indianapolis. Everybody knows Dixon's an unbelievable road racer. He's doing a great job out there right now. And Chip needs this real bad because, you know, they felt like they had that race won in Indy last week, Marty.
When we talk about guys that sort of sneak up on you, it's not Scott Dixon, and it's not even Buddy Rice. It's not Vitor Mira. It's not Ryan Briscoe. We've talked about all those guys. Get ready for 5th place, guys. It's the 14 of Felipe Giafoni, and we haven't seen him all day, but there he is for A.J. Foyt, now running in the top 5.
You know, that is remarkable because they are not really known as having a road course setup. Certainly have some oval setups right now as he's starting to get a little bit of heat from Castroneves.
Somebody said a local yellow, don't know exactly where. It looks like Castroneves trying to look underneath Giafoni.
Well, the local yellow's probably still here in 1 if actually the 27 of Franchitti is still sitting there. We'll have to wait and see. Maybe he has departed, but, you know.
There it was, right on the left side of the screen. We saw it momentarily, and we are starting to hear reports that the rain is coming in. In fact, there it is on our lens, and now everybody's on race slicks on lap 49. Here is the battle for 2nd right now as Vitor Mira and Buddy Rice. It's Mira now in front of Buddy. What a run this would be for Panther Racing. A couple of months ago, they were liquidating assets just to be able to keep going. Right now, with no major sponsorship, there he is. Let's check in now with Jamie Little.
Well, the rain is certainly coming down now, guys, but we caught up with Eddie Cheever, a man we've heard a lot about today. And now, Eddie, we heard from Danica, we heard from Michael Andretti, we heard from Marco Andretti. In both situations, first of all, talk about what happened with Marco.
I had just gone out on a new set of tires, and the track is very slippery, so it was obviously a handful. And he passed me on the high side, and there was really no room for me to move. I regret it, of course. I'm out of the race also, not just him, but I never had any problem with anybody getting by. It was just bad circumstances. If he or his father think that I'm going out of my way to create a problem for Marco, they're very mistaken. That definitely wasn't the case. As for Danica, it was on a restart. I got inside, and she didn't want to stay up high, or she slipped or whatever, and came down and touched them. That was just unfortunate.
In both situations, did you know the drivers were there?
Did I know Danica was there? I was passing Danica. And in Marco's, I was coming out. The car was I had cold tires on. I was doing everything I could to keep the car straight, so I had my hands full. But with Danica, obviously, she was in front of me and I was passing her.
All right, Eddie Cheever has spoken his piece, and we see Tony Kanaan stopped in the middle of the track. Marty.
Yeah, that's between turns 8 and 9, and the rain is getting worse. And now here we have a full course caution, and now who's going to blink? Do you come in and put the rain tires back on? And if you do, if you're the race leader, does somebody gamble at the back of the pack and stay out there? Because all they got to do is get Tony restarted, and they could go back to green flag racing.
Okay, I'll tell you what I'd do. I'd bring it down pit road right now, put the rain tires on, try to beat them all out of the pits, because nobody can run on slicks out here right now, Marty. It's impassable to run. The rain's coming down pretty hard right now. They've lost the racetrack, it looks like to me. It's got black.
Okay, what you saw there with the 7-Eleven car from Tony Kanaan, just trying to get the power down coming out of the turn. Just squeezed it just a little bit. That's 650 horsepower. Remember, we talked again, no traction control. The back end just starts to come around, and then you're a passenger. Rusty.
No traction control, cold tires, and plus rain. You got a disaster right there.
And what about Elio Castroneves? Well, he went for a skate as well. But he kept it off the wall and kept it under power. So he's going to give up a spot or two, but at least he has all four wheels still in place.
Well, I think we got our question answered with, it's a timed race here, but we still obviously have about another 5, 8, maybe 10 minutes. And I would say exactly what everybody's going to do is going to have to come in and put some reins on, guys. Otherwise, you're going to slide off.
12.5 minutes remaining in this race. Now, the pits you just heard on the radio are closed. Can't come in until they are open. So they're going to have to tiptoe around, as it is Scott Dixon, Vitor Meira, and Ryan Briscoe, your top three. And there is the race leader as you ride on board with the man who won here last year. Can he do it again? As the rain falls, we'll take you side by side for the dramatic conclusion. Don't go away. All right, the drama continues to build here at Watkins Glen. Scott Dixon, who has said on the radio while we were side by side, it is getting too wet out here. You see these guys trying to lock them up, get some heat into the tires. And then the question is, who is going to duck in and perhaps take rain tires as the rain continues to fall here? There is Vitor Meira in second place. Jack, you've got more?
Well, this is a gutsy call. Remember the little kid's storybook about the little engine that could? John Barnes back and forth with Vitor Meira, whether they should pit or not. They had the rain tires laid out. They thought that Scott Dixon was coming in. They finally asked Vitor Meira, Vitor, we're running down on time. Can you hold on? Can you stay out? Instead of Vitor answering, he stayed to the left of the entrance of pit road, Jerry Punch, and he stayed right behind Scott Dixon.
And down here in the Scott Dixon pit, Jack, they have rolled the dice. They basically put it in the driver's lap. They said, Scott, you make the call. It has stopped raining here in the pits. We know the track is a little bit slippery in the back. Is it that wet? Can you hang on? We have about 9 minutes remaining in this timed event. He said, you make the call. Dixon said, it's awfully wet back there, but I'm going to stay out. And indeed he did. So now we'll see who can hang on to the racetrack and the race car with about 8.5 minutes of racing remaining.
And to make matters worse for Tony Kanaan, we can tell you he just got informed he's going to get a 1-lap penalty for shortcutting the course, coming through what you guys run, Rusty, when you're here with the Nextel Cup cars on the short course. And that was explained to him in the driver's meeting. That would be a no-no today. So right now, let's talk strategy. If you're Scott Dixon, you had the race lead. Would you have pitted?
You know, with the way it was misting there before, it looked like that front was coming in. You think that might be the smart thing to do. There's a report right now that Scott Sharp and Ed Carpenter have rain tires on. We're trying to find out that information. But if as a leader, you're going to try and push as hard as you can without making the car slide or make a mistake. And the nice thing for the guy that's running in second, Vitor Meira, he gets to watch what the leader is doing.
Should
so
be
if the track
3 laps, Scott. 3 laps.
So if the track is slippery going through the turn just up ahead, Vitor will actually start to see Scott Dixon slide, and maybe he can react to that.
All right, let's set this for you. We are down to 6 minutes and 39 seconds left in this race. Approximately 3 laps. You heard them say that on the radio communication. Johnny Rutherford pulls the pace car off, and that means the race is now back in the hands of Scott Dixon. He'll come up through turns 9, 10, and 11. And we'll find out who can hold on or who's going to be skating off into oblivion one more time. Remember, we think 3 cars, 7th, 8th, and 9th place. Rice, Sharp, and Carpenter did duck in and did go to Rains. Who's going to win this? We're about to find out as we go back to green.
It's a pack up back there. There's some people with rain tires on, some people with slicks on. The ones with rain tires probably have just a little bit more grip right now. They're trying to get themselves through.
Man, I don't know if I'd like to go through there too abreast with the S's. You want to be a race car driver, folks? This is when you're going to earn your pay. Down into the chicane. Hold on. Can everybody make it through? 5 minutes left in the race. That's Giafoni in the 14. Buddy Rice is underneath him. Sam Hornish, who is a lap down.
I tell you guys, Dixon just might pull this thing off. My concern is this track still is wet. These guys are being really careful. They're tiptoeing out. You can see that right now, Scott.
Buddy Rice, not a lap down. Sam Hornish, as we told you, is a lap down. But I'm not sure Rice is on rain tires because he doesn't seem to be pulling away from the guys that are on slicks. But we are told from the pits that he is on race. Now he's starting to open up a little room. But has he got enough time to catch up to the race lead? Now here are the race leaders, and none of them are on rain tires. Scott Dixon, Vitor Meira, there they are coming through. That is turn number 8.
This is typically where the oh, there we go.
There's our first victim.
You might.
Tomas Scheckter goes around. Will this bring out a full course caution with 4 minutes and 15 seconds remaining in this race? And yes, it does. So for the second year in a row,
Take your time now. Take your time.
could Scott
We gotta
Dixon
find the pace car.
win this race under yellow? Last year, it was a last lap crash involving Elio Castroneves and Thomas Scheckter.
And that was on the very last lap, as you mentioned, Marty. But you know, you expect Dixon to be fast here, but the second and third place, what a story both of those are. Vitor Meira with the Panther Racing team and Ryan Briscoe in with the Dreyer and Reinbold team, second and third. If that's where they finish up there, what a story that is for both those teams.
And look at the safety crew. The Delphi crew is trying so hard to get this car refired and out of the way so that we could go back to green flag racing. 3 minutes and 30 seconds, and the clock continues to run. We could theoretically have a one-lap shootout.
Yeah, and right now Scott Dixon's going, take your time, guys. Don't be in any type of a rush.
And we are told that they are going to go back to green flag racing this time by. So they have gotten Scheckter out of harm's way. And there is Chip Ganassi. Indy escaped him a week ago. Dixon was penalized for blocking. Dan Weldon had a tire cut down with less than 20 laps to go.
I tell you what, if I was Chip Ganassi, I'd be chewing the end of that microphone off right now.
We have been told from race officials it will be green and white, this time by a one-lap shootout with Scott Dixon, Vitor Meira, Ryan Briscoe, and then Buddy Rice and Ed Carpenter have worked their way up to 4th and 5th.
I don't think I've ever watched drama like this unfold all year long, Marty. These IRL cars just get me. They're fast. The racing's been unbelievable all year long. There's always a story every race.
And the story here is, remember, Rice and Carpenter are on rain tires, and they managed to pick up several spots on the last restart. Can they get by enough to be a factor at the end of this race? Remember, there are some lap vehicles in between them, and there will be a one-lap shootout when we go back to green.
Now for Vitor Meira in the orange car that's right behind Scott Dixon, he needs to make sure he is on the gas. Dixon's already charging on the throttle. Vitor should have been just a little bit closer behind him.
Dixon trying to get a good jump as he comes around turn 11.
Green flag, green flag.
The green and white flies. One lap to go at Watkins Glen.
This is when your heart is racing, Marty. You just got your foot on the gas. You're trying to drive the thing as fast as possible through the turns.
Boy, and Dixon is just trying to check out on Meira. Third place, Ryan Briscoe has dropped back as well. So there's a huge gap between first, second. There's third place Briscoe. So right now, Scott Dixon through the chicane for the last time.
+5, Scott, +5.
That's the spotter giving him an idea of how many car lengths, about 5 car lengths over second place.
You know, right now he's looking out. He's looking at all these wet spots on the racetrack. I can't touch those things. Driving the last lap of his life, guys, right now. If he gets in this rain, 1 lap to go, he's going to be in trouble.
Formula One raced here back in the 60s all the way through 1980. Now it's the IndyCar Series, and maybe for the second year in a row, it will be Scott Dixon with the winner's laurel wreath hanging around his neck. And then, of course, he'll have to make a stop over the Seneca Lodge as he almost twitches right through there. The Lodge keeps all the race. And he's right, there is no pressure. Scott Dixon is on cruise control right now, although I bet you he doesn't feel that way.
No pressure behind, buddy.
Through the final turn for the final time, for the second year in a row, it will be Scott Dixon seeing the checkers here at Watkins Glen.
That's the way you do it, Scott. Good job. Whoa.
All he could say was, whoa.
He's probably happy the day is over.
What a great run for Vitor Meira and Ryan Briscoe. First time back in the car. That's the best run Dreyer and Reinbold has had all year in third place.
Vitor Meira, second place. Now give me a reason why not to sponsor that guy. What a deal.
You saw that was Buddy Rice, Giafone, Carpenter, then Castroneves in 7th. Danica Patrick got back on the lead lap for 8th. Scott Sharp and Tomas Scheckter round out the top 10.
And Chip Ganassi felt like he was black and blue leaving Indianapolis, and now he feels pretty good right now. Another win. Great job for him. The team is flawless today.
Scott Dixon's 5th career win. He's won on 2 of the 5 IRL road course races so far. So as we make our way around to the winner's circle, the flag and corner workers salute the winner, Scott Dixon, and we'll talk to him when we return to Watkins Glen. The Watkins Glen Indy Grand Prix on ABC Sports, brought to you by Firestone Tires, a tradition of innovation, the National Traffic Safety Administration, and Honda, proud sponsor of the Indy Racing League IndyCar Series. Well, just a few moments ago, this was the scene in Victory Lane as Scott Dixon, for the 2nd year in a row here at Watkins Glen, climbs from the cockpit, and he will wear the laurel wreath, traditional here at Watkins Glen. Let's check in with Dr. Jerry Punch.
All right, Scott Dixon has climbed out of the car in Victory Lane. And Scott, how in the world did you make that final decision to go wet or dry in terms of tire?
I don't know. I was a bit worried about it, and it was going to be a tough day at the end there if we had. But I think most of the field would have followed. But everybody's on the radio. Radio was terrible in the bottom section. I couldn't hear anybody, and we just decided that the rain had kind of stopped and thought we might hang on to it.
Chip Ganassi, frustration a week ago. This has got to feel pretty good.
Feels pretty good, Jerry. I'll tell you, Scott did the job up there, and Mike made the calls, and my hat's off to him.
Did you agree with the call?
Absolutely. I mean, it was just too risky, and it was drying off. It wasn't raining actually when they went back green again the last 2 times. It wasn't raining, so hopefully it was drying off a little bit. But I wasn't driving the car; it was his call.
Okay, guys, a victory here for Targa Ganassi. Frustration a week ago, and now Scott Dixon is a winner again at Watkins Glen.
And unfortunately for Vitor Meira, the 5th time in his career, he is 2nd place. It's a great run for him, but he's still looking for that first ever career win, guys.
Impressive run by quite a few people that are getting their best finishes in a long time, including, I think, Ed Carpenter now running his 8th, and that's, I think, back in Kentucky a little while ago. So for 6th for him is a great finish.
I was really impressed with Marco Andretti's drive today. Even though he crashed, the guy shows a lot of skill. Just amazing how fast the kid's running.
So for Team Penske, it's now 3 wins in 5 races. For Team Ganassi, it's 2 wins here in 06. Don't forget to tune in Saturday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN for the Bombardier Learjet 500. And don't forget, Thursday night on ABC, it's Game 1 of the NBA Finals as the Miami Heat will face the Dallas Mavericks. Coverage begins at 8 p.m. Eastern. ABC Sports is online at ESPN.com. Search ABC Sports. Coming up next, it's World News Tonight. And for those of you on the West Coast, it's the drive to Germany. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great evening. So long, everybody.